Hello, everybody. It's the Historical Gamer once again, and today we're going to be talking about a little bit of gaming news. That's because on Thursday, Matrix Games and Slytherin had their sort of annual convention where they talk about what's coming up with them, games they're working on, updates. Modern Naval Warfare, for example, I believe is entering a beta. Rule the Waves 3 has a major update coming early next year. There were some other games that were discussed, but in today's video, I want to talk specifically about War in Spain, 1936 to 1939, which is a upcoming game in the War In series. Now, it is not being made by Gary Grigsby, just to be clear. It is being made by Joint Warfare Simulations. Grigsby's company is 2x3 Games. So this is a sort of an independent outfit. My understanding, and the way that I think Eric, who originally founded Matrix Games, talked about it, is these guys are some of the guys who worked on War on the Pacific Admiral's edition. I would say it's a different company, though, because that was Henderson Field Productions. This is Joint Warfare Simulations. Some of the folks who were working on this also were not involved in War on the Pacific Admiral's edition. They mentioned that they had some new folks on the team, but also some legacy folks from War in the Pacific. Now, this is interesting because this is a game that is very clearly, when you look at the screens here, when you even read the description of what the folks are doing, says this game is heavily inspired by War in the Pacific, which makes sense if these guys worked on War in the Pacific Admiral's edition. The problem I always had with the idea of using War in the Pacific in a game like this, because we talked about this a few months ago when we started seeing some stuff pop up in the forums, that this might be in the works, but I had reservations because War in the Pacific is not a terribly good game at land combat. And Eric, in the video, and I'll link to the video with a timestamp where they talk about this game, and where Matrix talks about this game. I had some reservations because War in the Pacific is not a very good land combat game. It is a game that is focused on air and naval combat. It is a WeGo game, everything sort of, you put your orders in and then they unfold all at once. It's a game that has day-by-day turns, and so, that's the style of game that War in the Pacific was. Now, I love War in the Pacific, don't get me wrong, but I never would have thought, oh yes, let's do a Spanish Civil War game. It was interesting in the video that they talked about this being a completely new engine. I initially had some reservations about that just because when you look at the UI, it's like, this looks the same. There's some differences in the way some of the land units look, but like the UI looks damn similar. Some of the logistics stuff looks damn similar. The fighter pilot, the fighter screen where you see actual aircraft and their order options literally looks cut and pasted, and like they added maybe a few details to it, but looked straight out of War in the Pacific. And so I know UI can change from, engine to engine, and it can stay similar from engine to engine. But I kind of assumed what they were doing is they were taking War in the Pacific's game engine and upgrading it to cover this war, because that's what these folks did with War in the Pacific Admiral's Edition. War in the Pacific Admiral's Edition, you often heard about limitations that the developers had because they were working with the War in the Pacific engine, and so there were certain things that were hard-coded into the game from Grigsby and his team who made the original War in the Pacific, and so they had limitations. Now, what I will say is they made it a point during the video to say this is a new game engine. I was a little bit skeptical, but when you look at the actual feature page on matrixgames.com, it does say the game engine, game rules, etc., while inspired by War in the Pacific and based on its design and functionality, is a brand new engine from the ground up. Great, that's all well and good, but the piece here that really stands out is the last few words where it says, with no shared code. The fact that they're saying there's no shared code, I thought maybe they got like a root access and they could change hard-coded stuff, but if this is genuinely a new game engine from the ground up, I'm intrigued. They've said they're adding a lot to land combat as they have to cover the Spanish Civil War. If it was War in the Pacific Spain with the same land combat engine, that would not be an interesting game, but they did say they are upgrading the land combat element. I think some of the screens are interesting, like there's options to redistribute supply. There's a call out for how much supply per day a unit uses, which I actually think is brilliant. That type of information was available in War in the Pacific, but it was never quite clear down to like, oh, how much am I consuming per day? It was always, I never felt like the UI was very clear there. There also apparently is the ability to build new land combat units, new LCUs. At least that is a button in some of the screens. So I think that is interesting. It looks a lot like War in the Pacific, but again, I guess we'll see how the game plays. I'm curious how much actual control you have over industry and production. There's different supply types. I saw on one of the sort of screens they cycled through during the presentation, there was a call out for avgas, so aviation gas. There's a call out for ship ammunition, for land unit ammunition. They've got coal called out here. So it seems like the logistics perhaps are a little bit more detailed. I think coal was in War Plan Orange, which was sort of a DLC for War in the Pacific that looked at sort of a 1920s conflict during the War Plan era. But yeah, I'm really curious. I mean, War in the Pacific is a naval game to me, and they made a point that this game's going to include riverine combat, which should be interesting. There are some elements of naval combat or operations taking some islands inshore. Also the ability to use, they've mentioned a few times, like convoys to provide supplies, perhaps from like international groups funding the war, because, the Spanish Civil War was in many ways became a proxy war between different countries. So I'm intrigued. I will say that. I'm sure we will play it on the channel. I think one of the other really interesting things that Eric said in his video, or in his sort of talk, he indicated this was going to be like the first of a series of games, which could be really interesting, because I've always kind of viewed like, oh no, War in the Pacific will never get another game, because Grigsby kind of talked about not kind of being like, we were crazy to try that, I think. And the War in the East stuff is great. We haven't really gotten into it on the channel. Maybe we should. But it kind of obscures things in a way I don't like, because it has like week-long turns rather than day-long turns. I think there's something special about this series with day-long turns. And it looks to me, if they're doing supply by day and if they're calling out specific dates, I'm assuming they're going to adopt the day-by-day approach as War in the Pacific had. So that's kind of cool. I hope it doesn't just become a purely land-based game going forward. Like, if they're going to do more games, I would love for them to do a War in the Pacific 3, right? You're going to build the engine. You're going to make the game. Let's do that. But we'll see. But yeah, I guess I'm generally excited to see something that is at least at least claiming to be, despite the fact that the UI doesn't look it, at least claiming to be a brand new from the ground up game in this vein, because we don't get a lot of really crunchy, really groggy games like that these days. Even Matrix doesn't make a lot of them, especially in the turn-based genre. You've got some newer stuff like the Command Modern naval operations, but that's real time and that doesn't have the same strategic layer. Flashpoint has a new game coming out, but that's more operational in nature. So it's pretty cool to see something like this coming out. Or actually, Flashpoint, I would say, is probably more tactical than this. But it's pretty cool to see a sort of strategic / operational game like this come out. Yeah, it'll be early next year, along with the Rule the Waves game the update that's coming out will also be early next year. So maybe January, February timeframe, we'll have a lot of stuff. I've been kind of complaining there hadn't been a lot that was coming out of late. So yeah, I mean, I have reservations. I'll just say it. I've always felt like Spain doesn't make a lot of sense. I hope their costs are low, or that they're doing this part-time as a passion project, because I can't imagine you're going to sell a ton of copies. Like, great as a test bed, but maybe not where you want to be in terms of like, oh, we've got to sell a ton of copies to make the second game in the series happen. I also just wonder, I would not have so closely copied the UI from War in the Pacific. That's again, I look at some of these screens and I just say, how is this a new engine from the ground up? What do you really mean? Because I've seen games where they say it's a new engine and it's not. It's an original game, an original engine that they kind of are able to edit the source code, but the bulk of the stuff doesn't change. If this is truly a new engine, I just wonder why they made some of the decisions that they made. But I'm also not a technologist. I'm not a programmer per se. So it's just my curiosity. But this user interface, the fighter screen is just like, all right, we wanted to add a bunch more stuff. But also all the stuff from War in the Pacific as well. So I don't know. I mean, it's cool. They've got the same fighter pilot management screen, like get new pilot, get one pilot, request veteran. They still have replacement pools. So if it's brand new from the ground up, they sure did copy the guts of how the game works, which is cool. But also, yeah, I don't know. Are we going to be managing fighter pilot pools in Spain? I guess that should be interesting to see. But yeah, I want to know more. I want to learn more. I want to play it. I part of me hesitates, says I wish they would have picked a different conflict, but also if they've got family members and whatnot, they kind of hinted that had sort of history there from their hometown. I can't knock these guys if some of the team actually has a story tied back to the game. That's always sort of something that really drives passion projects and makes things possible. I don't have a lot else to say other than this is intriguing. I guess we'll see what comes of it. It's good to see a new War In series. I hope it does. I hope they do a good job and the land combat is truly, working. The game does have a new logistical system, which I think you have to have because, again, the land logistics were very simplified in War in the Pacific. Couple other details that are here on the site: 5-mile hexes, so a much more granular look on the Iberian Peninsula. War in the Pacific was 40-mile. Actually, War in the Pacific, I think it was 60-mile hexes. Admiral Edition was 40-mile hexes. This is 5-mile hexes, so a much more zoomed-in look. But it's only covering Spain, so that makes sense. 9 scenarios, including a full war grand campaign. We talked about logistics and land being heavily over reworked. I don't know what they mean by saying it has true AI opponent, not just a series of scripts. Okay. Scripts can still be used by scenario designers to create certain historical flavor, but apparently it has true AI. So Skynet's going to be taking over. Order of battle system now allows historical breakdowns and buildups like War in the Pacific, which implemented, unlike War in the Pacific, which implemented primarily generic breakdowns. Okay. There's an editor for modders, so that's pretty cool. I'd love to see folks use this. And also, like, the naval stuff is still there. It's not the scale of World War II, but they do make a point on the information screen that naval combat's still relevant. You still see it in some of the screens there. And also, like, there are some naval operations. I think the riverine aspect of the game could be pretty neat if they really lean heavily into riverine combat. But that also supplies and transports, and like they've got AKLs, AKs, SSs, cruisers. So that could be kind of interesting. But yeah, I don't know that I have a ton of other things to say other than I guess we'll see in 2026. I think they said was it January 22nd? Is that when they said it was being launched? Yes, it is. I just checked. So just about 3 months away. They are recruiting beta testers. They're already in sort of a closed beta, but they're going to do more beta testing as well. And I think this will be certainly a game we will cover on the channel, and I'll be intrigued to play it. And maybe we can make another game where we take 5 years and we don't finish the game. But that's all I got for you guys today. Let me know your thoughts below. That was maybe 10 more minutes of rambling than I needed to. Still, Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Links in the description for more information. And until next time, I'm out.